Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Undead Frankie, and joining me for this is Solidcal.
Hey guys, it's Solidcal here, and I'll be joining Undead Frankie on this journey through the test levels.
Throughout the video, we'll attempt to guess the intended use for each of these levels. On screen now is a list of all the levels in this video. Timestamps are in the description. And without further ado, the first stages we will be looking at are X Survivor Box and X Vehicle Box. The first thing that I did was recruit Floyd, or, Bill. Then I went into the early bathrooms, and Floyd had no problem following me. These were surprisingly detailed compared to the rest of the level, but were still rough. Surprisingly, there's a functional save point in this bathroom. Going from the men's room to the women's side, and the only real difference is that the urinals are replaced with stalls, and there is a vent that looks out of place on the wall. There is also another save point in this room. In this room, there are an assortment of slot machines. These were most likely used to test the nav mesh files. The nav mesh allows non-playable characters, including bosses, survivors, and looters, to move around in the environments. This glass test shows that NPCs can tell whether glass is blocking their way. Floyd runs around while the glass is in place and follows through it after it's been destroyed. This next room shows that NPCs can navigate around chest-high obstacles. There are similar to the barricade railings in the finished areas. Like the other tests in this room, the stairs are used to make sure that the NPCs could follow the player at different angles and elevations. The stairs differ in width and angle. In a later test room, stair width will be fully displayed. Floyd was able to make it up and down all the flights of stairs without issue. Unfortunately, the escalators in this test room don't move, but they are still a cool sight to see. This box is a great way to show pathfinding through broken glass, as Floyd can only walk through certain sections after the glass has been destroyed. And with that taken care of, we can finally stop talking about NPC tests. Attached to the same environment is the vehicle box, where the tester could try any of the vehicles in the game and a few pushable objects like wheelchairs and drink carts. The track itself isn't very interesting, but there is a good shot of it in the overhead view. With a lot of these areas, they're visually simple, and geometry-wise, there isn't much to see, but what they lack in detail they make up for with their functions. This is the first of many areas we will be covering in this video.
This is X-Shader Zoo. The first notable feature in this map is the specular reflection applied to most of the textures. There are 3 lights placed around the room, white, red and green, were likely used to help with tint in the screen. In the centre of this first room, we see an early version of Chuck Green's default outfit. This outfit, amazingly, is a low poly version of Chuck's early design, which had him in a black jacket, jeans, sporting black hair as well as a different face model. I covered this in my Chuck Evolution vid a while back. Pretty neat to see all of this outside of the art. But now once we move into the hallway, we can see there are 2 bright lights with sky textures, and below it are 4 early and unused vending machines. The main room contains more early textures and even more lights. Interestingly, they included the clock face from the silver strip for some reason. The only other notable feature of this room are its multicoloured spotlights and broken glass shadows. By no-clipping through the wall, another section can be found. It has a chart of collision types and material types. Enjoy this quick fly-through of the map before we move on to the next test level.
In a previous video, I assumed this level and Audio Zoo were related to the Fortune City Zoo, but clearly they were not. Instead, this room contains all the different interactable objects in the game like blenders, minigames, and peep show doors. It also has a small selection of weapons, items, and vehicles. The name Zoo is likely based on the items in the room. On the east side of the map, there's also an orange cube, which helps to show the position of the sun. Now I'll move on to the overhead. Out of all the maps in this video, this is one of the more simple ones. However, it felt great to finally know what this level really was.
X-Clothing is a pretty empty and not a fully interesting map, however it does use water audio for the footsteps. I imagine this was to test different shoe sounds, not too sure. Level was also featured in my video Dead Rising 2 Scrapped Outfits Part 2.
Welcome to the X Audio Zoo. Take note of the muted green color scheme and black windows. The first test in this room shows off jumping and climbing heights with an assortment of cubes. They are labeled and include measurements for the heights and distances. While Chuck does that, a few levels we will be looking at have a very similar layout with a few differences, hence why I mentioned the color scheme. X Audio Zoo, X Gameplay Metrics Box, and X Metrics Box all use a similar layout. The next test shows the maximum jump and climb distance, which is 400 centimeters, as well as the minimum width Chuck can fit through, which is 100 centimeters. The other segments are self-explanatory, like the 35-degree ramp, railing test, and minimum clearance test. This room is called Casino Metrics. It contains scale information for the slot machines and tables. Some of these are quite different to the final game, and if these models were anything to go by, some of the seats may have been mounted to the floor, but this is just speculation. The blue character models found in this room are all LOD models of Chuck. They were most likely used to scale the machines and tables properly. Unlike the outfit found in X Shader Zoo, the model of Chuck used in these rooms appears to be closer to final. I don't think Chuck was ever intended to sit at the slot machines, because it would have made the player vulnerable and repeated plays would have been tedious. In the next room, it defines height and width of different doors, walls, and stairs. It also contains information about different ceiling heights in centimeters. There's also a functional combo bench. These appear in a few test levels, and it's always the same, so I won't mention it again. With the table floating above the ground, it's a bit easier to see Chuck's animations while using the combo bench. Moving on, this was a pretty simplistic room called Interior Metrics. Like with many other rooms, it gives scale information for each object. A lot of these seem unique to this room, as I don't recognize them in the final game, but in all fairness, these models are so simple it makes it hard to distinguish them from other models. Once again, the yellow or orange model by the table and chair is also an LOD of Chuck. Moving on to the reason this is called X Audio Zoo, here we have a few different materials and their audio is attached. I'll let you listen without further interruption. The next area is stored templates. I'll be switching between X Audio Zoo and X Gameplay Metrics Box to show a few differences in these layouts. Each layout has measurements and climbable properties. Objects textured in red are climbable, while dark gray objects are not. There isn't much to say about these room templates, but they do contain objects from Dead Rising 1. Actually, they remind me of Dead Rising stores, but I couldn't find exact matches for them. The writing on the floor and walls in these sections just show the different rules, like minimum path width and store depth. I switched to Audio Zoo here because the walls don't load properly for the drive-through store template. And before you ask, I have no idea why it's called a drive-through template. I highly doubt it had anything to do with vehicles though. The corner store template seems very similar to Fashion Fiesta and the entrance plaza of Dead Rising 1. It's missing the path that led to the changing rooms, but it has space for it based on the floor model. In red, you can see a rough guess of where it would have been if it was attached to the model. I included another comparison, but keep in mind that Dead Rising 1 has a higher FOV value than Dead Rising 2. The food court template seems to be a rough copy of the Jade Paradise restaurant in the food court of the first game. While the Jade Paradise is more detailed than this, it still maintains a similar layout. Now these side entrance doors should look familiar. While the store to the right doesn't resemble players, the store opposite to it is clearly Child's Play. Earlier I stated that Dead Rising 1 objects were being reused, and these store displays were used many times before now. When I realized what I was looking at, I couldn't believe it. Unfortunately, the Servbot statue is absent from the room, and in its place is another display. The scaling of this room makes me think that this was either directly ported from the first game, or they were roughly shaped to look like those models. Over to the washrooms, and once again these areas appear to be very similar to the bathrooms in Paradise Plaza. The scale is off, but besides that it was clearly inspired by the first game's design. In the women's side, there's a difference in the divider. They wouldn't model holes in it for a map like this. The sink and mirror areas of both bathrooms also look very similar to Dead Rising 1. The drugstore is the last template, but it should also look familiar. It's actually the layout of Roy's Mart in the Royal Flush Plaza. It didn't actually change much from this layout, so it's nice to see Roy's Mart early. The major differences are the climbable shelves both in the main store area and behind the counter. I always like to grab a hygiene mask, but it's not placed in this rough version, and neither is the door. The height of the desk in the room with Zombrex is also taller. To me it looks like a cabinet or a shelf. And with one of the larger segments of this video finished, I can show you the overhead view for these levels. Due to their size, I had to mess with the camera FOV and height to make these shots, so some of them might not be fully rendered. X Gameplay Metrics box looks really nice from this view, with its color-coded rooms and objects. It's a shame I couldn't manage to get the slot machines to load as well without increasing the FOV too much.
An early version of the Tape It or Die map was also found. This bullseye target was later changed to a dartboard, but its model wasn't scaled down properly, so you got a bullseye-sized dartboard in the final game. Like some of the other test levels, these contain weapons and items, however with the HUD disabled, there is no interaction icon. Weapons can't be used in this area, unlike the final game. Also has a functional door, which leads you straight to Palisades Mall.
The Atlantica Casino is one of my favorite areas in Dead Rising 2, so when I saw this I was completely blown away. Being able to see it like this was really something special. There's quite a few differences, including advertising signs being mounted to the wall and changes to the ceiling, which you'll see more in a bit. Another difference is the crown entrance to the pirate ship. It's absent in the final version. Also, in the ceiling above the ship, there was supposed to be an animated fish tank, which was also removed. In the poker room, there isn't many differences except for the layout of the televisions, and it's missing the door to the vault. However, the sign outside of it did change. Instead of being called just Poker, it was originally the Mermaid Poker Room. This actually made it into the Atlantica Casino in this version, but was changed to this later in development. A lot of the objects in this area look like benches, but I believe these are the placements for slot machines. The entrance from Silver Strip changed quite a bit. Instead of 2 statues, it was replaced with one larger statue. The game still calls different segments of the Silver Strip north and south, but it was probably unnecessary on these signs. Some areas are very simplistic, like the interior of this booth. And while there isn't much to say about them, this is the theater used for the magician show, and notably, the ceilings were much higher in this version. It's also shaped like a dome, unlike the flat ceilings of the final game. Once again, here's an overhead view of this level.
First of many early rooftop levels is X Rooftop Hotel. While it doesn't have many major differences compared to its final design, it is missing the platform with the sign, as well as the rest of the hotel. Funnily enough, the final version of the hotel rooftop still contains some of its early assets. The surrounding lights were replaced with a stone wall, which is a relatively neutral change. While most of the rooftops shown here are pretty close to final, this X Rooftop Safe House map contains small differences like the shape of the fence on the Safe House rooftop. The shaders are also early, mostly noticeable when you're in the elevator. Along with the other rooftops, this one also includes items and working exits. Some of these areas, they have rough models, while others are nearly final. Rooftop Theatre map has simple cubes, rectangles and cylinders for objects, Moving on to the Yucatan rooftop, we can see that out of all the rooftop levels, this one has the most progress. Lots of the early models were replaced by this point, but its shaders were still very early. This is obvious by how shiny some of the surfaces look. Unlike retail, all the tiles of the floor are connected. The design was changed to look more like it was under maintenance or construction. At the top of the stairs, we can even see that the doors weren't placed properly in this version. The carpet on the scaffoldings was later changed to a blue tarp and a large wood board as well. These are rough layouts of the buildings that decorate the background of the final stage. Now on to the X rooftop Royal Flush. This Royal Flush rooftop has different railings, simple geometry, and a few items. It has working exits which lead to Silver Strip. It doesn't lead to any other test level, instead it goes to the retail version.
The next map is the Atlantica rooftop, and it's much different, mostly because the entire casino is different. It has both placeholder models and items, as well as a functional exit to the Silver Strip. In the final version, the rooftop is off-centered from the casino entrance, but in this version it's directly on top of it. From above, you can see just how different it really is, and luckily, only this rooftop has extra collision, which, to my amazement, allowed me to capture this early version of the Silver Strip. Two things that immediately stuck out were the missing tunnels and the Palisades Mall. The final layout has the Luawawi and Shamrock Casino in its place. Across from it was originally the food court. While it's still in the same spot, this layout appears to have an entrance to it. On the left side, there's the pub, fireworks store, and adult shop. Later on, the fireworks store was probably replaced by the Rocket's Red Glare near the Slot Ranch Casino. The layout on the right side is also quite different. The Weddings R Us, Bingo Hall, and the Pawn Shop were in a different order, and the Weddings R Us would become the Swept Away Chapel. The slot barn at the end of the North Strip was also changed later to the Slot Ranch Casino. Here's a better look at the stores. In the previous segment, I spawned zombies in to show the scale of the map. They are not there by default. I also noticed that some of the stores have green textures for the entrances, while others do not. This could be a problem with the version used for the Atlantica rooftop, but I didn't notice any additional green doors in the other levels. Towards the middle of the strip, there's different versions of all the entrances, starting with the Atlantica, then the Fortune City Hotel, and finally, the Royal Flush Plaza. There was also a small portion of the Royal Flush Plaza loaded. I also saw what looked like a ramp, but in this recording, I didn't exactly make the jump. There's also an earlier version of the Fortune City Hotel, and I really like the pillars in this design, but I'm not sure how the full model looked. Around the other side, I noticed this was also attached to the hotel. Part of it looks like a hallway, but there's really no way to say for sure. This is a view from behind the doors. It shows off the archway better than the other angle did. Here's what it looks like with only diffused textures. There's a lot of differences, so to avoid making the video even longer, I won't cover everything. In the South Strip, there's more stores but no collision or written names. This gives a nice look into the rough designs that would later inspire the final stores. The scale of this map seems larger than the final strip as well, but it's hard to tell in game. To me, seeing the arena flat with everything else made it appear bigger. But most of these models stayed the same with one main exception, that being this entrance. It would have led to the South Plaza. Unfortunately, this entrance and the one to the Palisades Mall were both cut. Now for the last overhead view of this video and some closing remarks. With all of the early levels, they were used to help the environmental team model them in higher quality. None of the stages shown in this video had any music, and so for that reason I muted most of it. For the last shot of the video, I disabled textures, and I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I'd also like to take this chance to thank Solidcal for being in this video.
Thank you Undead Frankie for letting me join you on this journey through the test levels. If any of you guys would like to check out some of the stuff I do, head over to my channel. I'll make an assortment of videos ranging from Dead Rising to Grand Theft Auto to whatever I feel up to, so hope to see you over there.
A link to his channel will be in the description, but that's it for this video, and I hope you've enjoyed.